The dragon warrior was fining me when she said, "If you weren't married, I would add my number." I blinked, unsure which part was more shocking, that she was fining me for unauthorized atmospheric disturbance, or that a 7-foot armored reptilian commander with molten gold eyes just hit on me mid-ticket. I managed, looking up from the datapad she shoved in my face. "You're joking, right?" Her frilled crest flared slightly, the draconian version of a smirk. "Do I appear to be in jest, human?" she asked, her voice a low purr of thunder. The light from the volcanic planet below painted her bronze scales in flickering orange. Her armor, half ceremonial, half combat exosuit, hummed with faint thermal runes. I'd been through war zones, embargoes, and one galactic customs audit, but never this. "Commander Elias Trent," she continued, reading my name from the pad. "Terran Registry Vessel Ardent. You violated draconian airspace by 1.2 click. Fines total, 43,000 credit. Payable immediately." I whistled. 43,000? For a 1.2 click mistake. She tilted her head, eyes narrowing. 4 disrespecting boarders of the Ember clans. "I was delivering medical aid to the mining settlement down there," I said, gesturing out the viewport toward the settlement domes that glowed faintly against the lava fields. "Children were sick from sulfur exposure. You're really gonna fine me for saving lives?" Her gaze flicked to the planet, then back to me. "Your compassion does not negate your trespass. And flirting doesn't make your fine go down easier," I muttered. That earned a deep, throaty sound, somewhere between a growl and a chuckle. "You have fire, human. I like that." "I'm married," I said quickly, raising both hands. "Happily. 2 kids. One very angry spouse who'll kill me if she hears I was flirting with a dragon warrior during a ticketing process." Her crest rippled again, amused. "Your spouse is fortunate. Few males of your species retain humor under threat." "Threat?" I said. "I thought this was a friendly traffic stop." Her tail flicked. "It could be either." The silence between us simmered, the kind that happens when 2 predators realize they're not sure who's hunting who. I'd heard about the Draconians, a warrior race from the volcanic worlds, forged in fire and arrogance. They respected strength, despised weakness, and had a long-standing opinion that humans were soft. But lately, humanity had been making ripples. We'd fought the core dominion to a stalemate, built colonies where no one else could, and didn't flinch when a dragon told us to kneel. Apparently Zyra, that was her name, had read those same reports. "You flew through a restricted zone with your shields off," she said finally, scanning my ship's telemetry. "Why?" "Because the miner's sensors can't handle active shield interference. They'd think it was a quake," I said. "And because sometimes you do the right thing even if it breaks a rule." That made her pause. For a moment I thought she might actually understand. Then she said, "Your ethics are admirable. Your navigational competence is not." I groaned. "So no warning, just the full fine?" "No warning," she said, then leaned closer, her breath warm and faintly metallic. "But perhaps a deal. Please tell me it's not that kind of deal." Her eyes glinted. "I'm assembling a patrol squad. One of my pilots crashed near the mines you aided. If you can retrieve him, I will reconsider the fine." "You're blackmailing me into a rescue mission?" "Call it negotiated redemption." I sighed. "And if I refuse?" She smiled, a slow, sharp flash of fangs. "Then I fine you, confiscate your ship, and have tea while watching you beg for transport home." "Tea. Draconian custom. We drink before we destroy." I rubbed my face. "You people really need better diplomats." "I am the diplomat," she said. Of course she was. An hour later, I was back in my ship's cockpit, running diagnostics and regretting every life choice that led to being blackmailed by a dragon with authority. "Trent," came her voice over comms. It was smoother now, less formal. "I've transmitted coordinates for the crash site. Atmospheric turbulence is high, proceed cautiously." I rolled my eyes. Yes, Commander. Do not die, she added. I have not yet decided whether you are amusing or useful. That's touching, I said. I'll put it on my tombstone. The Ardent descended through burning clouds. The planet below was chaos, black mountains streaked with molten rivers, air shimmering with heat distortion. My sensors pinged the crash site, a downed Draconian scout craft wedged against a cliff. Got eyes on your boy, I said. Looks alive. Retrieve him, she ordered. And do not damage his armor. Sure, but I can't promise his ego will survive being rescued by a human. Static. Then what might have been a laugh. Landing was rough. The heat pressed like a physical weight. I suited up, crossed the rocky terrain, and found the pilot, unconscious, pinned under debris. His armor was cracked, leaking coolant. Hey there, scales for brains, I muttered, heaving metal aside. Let's get you out before the ground decides to melt. The Draconian stirred weakly. Human? Yeah, don't pass out. I'm the idiot your boss sent. He tried to protest, but I had him slung over my shoulder before he could finish. My suit alarms screamed from the rising temperature as I sprinted back to the Ardent. Lava vented nearby, painting everything in hellish red. Inside, I hit liftoff, barely clearing a geyser of molten gas. Package secured. I set over comms, panting. Zyra's voice came through, calm but low. You are either very brave or very foolish. I get that a lot. A pause. Then, return him safely. The fine will be forgotten. When we docked back at her carrier, she stood waiting, tall and regal even among her crew. The rescued pilot bowed, murmuring thanks in their guttural tongue. Zyra turned to me. You kept your word. I shrugged. You kept yours. No fine, right? Her crest rose, approval maybe. Indeed. And Elias Trent. Yeah. She stepped closer again, those molten eyes glinting. If you ever find yourself unmarried. Don't finish that sentence, I warned, grinning despite myself. She smirked, an expression I never thought possible on a dragon. Until next time, human. As I lifted off, the comm crackled once more. Trent, you fly like you fight. Recklessly. I respect that. I couldn't help smiling. And you fine like you flirt, dangerously. Her laughter followed me into orbit. 2 weeks after the fine that wasn't, I told myself I'd never see the dragon warrior again. The universe, naturally, laughed in my face. Her transmission arrived just as I was elbow-deep in a coolant line, halfway through fixing my ship's temperamental reactor. The comm pinged with a priority seal, Draconian authority, encrypted and unmistakably hers. Commander Elias Trent. Report to Station Pyrehold. Immediately. I stared at the message and muttered, nope. Then, a second later, failure to comply will result in a formal sanction under Interstellar Accord Article 7C. Double nope. Then, finally, and perhaps T. I sighed. Triple nope, I said, already setting course. Station Pyrehold. Draconian stations were built like fortresses. Even from orbit, Pyrehold looked menacing, a colossal ring wrapped around a molten moon, its hull glowing faintly from the heat it siphoned. Docking clearance came with enough warnings to make me question my life choices again. When the airlock opened, the heat hit first, thick, heavy, metallic. The corridors shimmered with ambient thermal vents, and armored warriors the size of trucks eyed me as if wondering how best to roast me. And there she was. Lady Zyra waited at the end of the docking corridor, flanked by 2 guards. She was out of her armor this time, if you could call what she wore casual. A sleeveless scaled uniform, crimson with gold trim, exposed strong shoulders and a coiled tail that twitched with amusement. Human, she greeted, her tone equal parts command and curiosity. You came. Against my better judgment, I said. What's this about, Commander? Lady, she corrected. Commander is a rank. Lady is earned. Noted, Lady Zyra. Now why am I here? You lose another pilot. She grinned, all fangs and confidence. No. I intend to lose to you. I blinked. Say that again? I have challenged you to the trial of claws. The what now? Her guards rumbled softly, laughter, maybe. Zyra's voice lowered. A contest. Strength, strategy, and honor. You proved bravery during the rescue. My superiors demand proof of your species' worth. You will represent humanity. Oh no, I said. I'm a pilot, not a gladiator. Her crest flicked upward. Your file says otherwise. Naval commendations. Close quarters training. One incident labeled classified. That incident involved a sandwich toaster and a misunderstanding. I do not care. You will fight. I stared at her. And if I refuse? She leaned in, the faint heat radiating from her skin making my collar damp. Then I will assume your species' courage ends at paperwork. There it was, the draconian equivalent of I dare you. The arena. The trial of claws was held in a hollowed volcanic amphitheater within the station's core. Magma flowed through channels under glass flooring, bathing the place in a red glow. Draconian spectators filled the stands, warriors, nobles, engineers, all murmuring in low, guttural tones as they looked down at the lone human in a pressure suit. Me. Across the arena, Zyra emerged in full ceremonial armor. Polished scales interlocked with red-black plating, wings unfurled, eyes burning like suns. The crowd fell silent as she raised her spear, a molten blade humming with plasma. She looked magnificent and terrifying. You're enjoying this, aren't you? I called out through the comms. Immensely, she replied. You have 3 objectives. Stay alive, impress the audience, and do not make me regret sparing your ship. Comforting. A low horn bellowed. The ground panels shimmered. The match had begun. The duel. Zyra moved first, a blur of speed and heat. Her spear slashed through the air, leaving trails of plasma. I dove aside, rolling behind a heat pillar. The floor sizzled where her weapon struck. Your reflexes are adequate, she said, circling me. Thanks, I said, drawing a stun baton. Yours are terrifying. The crowd hissed approval when I parried her next strike. Sparks showered across the glass floor. She pressed forward, heavy, precise blows that would have crushed armor. I danced backward, using terrain, forcing her into overextension. Your fighting style, she said between strikes, is undisciplined. Human improvisation, I said. We call it not dying creatively. I triggered my baton's overcharge, a crackle of blue lightning arcing across her spear. She blinked, surprised, as her weapon momentarily shorted out. I kicked the haft, sending it spinning away. The crowd gasped. Zyra looked at me, genuinely amused. You disarmed me. I aimed to impress. Her eyes narrowed. Then you will earn it. She lunged barehanded, claws out, catching my baton mid-swing. The heat of her grip scorched my gauntlet. She twisted, sending me sprawling. Flat on my back, I stared up at her silhouette framed by molten light. She could have ended it right there. Instead, she offered a clawed hand. Rise, human, she said softly. The trial is not about victory. It is about will. I took her hand, pulled myself up, and then, because I couldn't resist, jabbed my baton into her shoulder with the non-lethal setting. She froze, then laughed, a deep, echoing sound that made the crowd cheer wildly. You are insane, she said, clutching her shoulder. I respect that. Occupational hazard, I said. We humans get bored easily. After the duel. Later, in the observation chamber, I sat nursing a bruised rib while Zyra dismissed her guards. The molten light of Pyrehold flickered across her scales. You fought well, she said, pouring 2 cups of something that hissed faintly, draconian tea, molten amber in texture. I fought barely, I said. You could have crushed me. Yes, she said, handing me a cup. But you didn't yield. That is what matters to my people. And what does your council think? I asked. They think humans are unpredictable, dangerous, worthy of closer study. I took a sip, Immediately regretted it as the liquid scorched my tongue. Is this tea or weaponized plasma? She chuckled. Both. We sat in silence for a moment, watching the lava flows through the viewport. Then she said, almost casually, "The next trial will not be so gentle." I groaned. Next trial? You proved courage. Now you must prove loyalty. To who? To the draconian way. We are at war, Elias Trent, and you have just volunteered. I did what? Her smile was slow, wicked, and entirely too amused. You wish to be done with fines and games. Very well. You are now under my command. I slumped back in my chair. I miss when you just wanted to flirt and ticket me. Her crest flared in laughter. Then perhaps I shall fine you again, for old time's sake. If there was one thing I learned about the Draconians, it was this: they didn't train. They hunted. So naturally, when Lady Zyra said, "You are under my command now," what she meant was, "You're joining us on a live-fire combat sweep over a volcanic warzone." Define live-fire, I'd asked. She'd smiled, all fangs and confidence. If it moves and tries to kill you, you may return the favor. And that's how I found myself in a Draconian strike ship, flying escort for Zyra's patrol through the molten skies of Rakthar, a planet so unstable that even the clouds occasionally exploded. The mission. The Draconians called it a cinder sweep, a patrol through their border territory to root out raiders from the Ashen Syndicate, an alien mercenary outfit known for ambushing convoys and melting whatever they couldn't steal. Zyra's crew was all scale and muscle, their armor gleaming in the crimson light. I sat among them in a human flight suit that suddenly felt about as protective as pajamas. My ship, Ardent, was tethered to the formation, a nimble Terran vessel surrounded by armored dragons with plasma wings. Human, Zyra's voice crackled over the comms. You will take the flank. Your sensors are more primitive. Let us see if your instincts make up for it. Copy that, Lady Zyra, I said. Primitive instincts engaged. Try not to die, she added. I still owe you tea. The rest of her squad laughed, a deep, rumbling chorus that vibrated through the comms. The ambush. It started with static. Then, a ping, faint, intermittent, buried in the background noise. My gut tightened. Contact, I said. Bearing 314, low orbit drift, masking heat signature under thermal vents. Zyra's tone sharpened instantly. I detect nothing. Trust me, I said, fingers flying over the console. There. A beat. Then, all wings follow the human. That was a sentence I never thought I'd hear from a dragon. We banked hard, breaking formation and diving toward the volcanic ridge. Through the ash haze, my sensors caught the telltale shimmer of a cloaked vessel, big, armored, and bristling with guns. Confirmed Syndicate craft, I called. Looks like they're powering up. Engage, Zyra commanded. The sky exploded. Missiles streaked out from the ridge, plasma bolts arcing in wild spirals. Draconian interceptors dove, their engines roaring like living thunder. The Ardent shuddered as I flipped to evasive, countermeasures firing in blinding bursts. Zyra, they've got anti-thermal mines. I shouted. Her voice was calm, deadly. Then melt them faster. That was her version of tactic. The fight. We danced between death and heat, ships weaving through columns of fire. The Syndicate raiders were fast, small fighters with stealth plating and adaptive camouflage. But I had something they didn't: human unpredictability. Computer, route power to lateral thrusters, I ordered. Let's do something stupid. The Ardent skidded sideways, spinning through plasma trails, scraping the edge of a volcanic plume. A Syndicate fighter overshot, and I nailed it with a rail slug right through its reactor. The explosion painted the sky orange. Good shot, Zyra said over comms. Do that again. I'm improvising here. Then improvise harder. Her own ship, a sleek, black warlance of a vessel, speared through another fighter, cleaving it in two with a burst of plasma flame. Her laughter filled the comms. Ah, how I have missed real battle. You call this real? Of course. You are not dead yet. The trap. Then came the part no one expected. A massive shadow emerged from below, not a fighter, but a cruiser. It rose out of the lava itself, hull dripping molten rock, its magnetic plating glowing white-hot. Oh hell, I muttered. That's not a raider. That's a syndicate carrier. Confirmed, Zyra said. And its cannons are locked on me. On you, I said. Lucky day. She laughed again, but there was strain in her voice. Evasive maneuvers. All wings scatter. Her formation broke apart under the first salvo. Plasma lances carved through the clouds, vaporizing rock. One of her lieutenant's ships took a direct hit, spiraling into the magma below. Zyra, your right flank's open, I said, cutting across her vector. Withdraw, human. Not a chance. I angled the Ardent into a suicidal dive straight toward the carrier's forward guns. Every alarm in my cockpit screamed. I armed the railgun, bypassed safeties, and poured every bit of power into one overloaded shot. Come on, I whispered. Hold together, girl. The rail slug punched through the carrier's gun deck and detonated its plasma feed. The explosion was nuclear bright, the shock wave slamming me into my harness. My ship spun, alarms blaring, hull integrity at 23%. I thought I was done. Then a shadow swept past, Zyra's ship, extending magnetic clamps to catch my tumbling vessel midspin. You insane human, she growled over comms, voice thick with relief. You struck a cruiser with a freight gun. It worked, didn't it? You could have died. Occupational hazard. She went quiet for a moment. Then, softer, you risked yourself for my squad. That's what humans do. Aftermath. The syndicate force was annihilated. Draconian salvage crews later reported the carrier's wreckage still burning in the magma vent. Back aboard Pyrehold, I found myself standing before the Draconian High Council, 6 enormous dragons, each wearing ceremonial armor that probably outweighed my ship. Zyra stood beside me, head held high. This human, she said, fought with honor, cunning, and courage. He saved my command and destroyed a carrier with an unmodified vessel. I request formal recognition of Terran capability under Clan Ember law. One of the elders leaned forward. Recognition? For a soft blood. Zyra's eyes narrowed. He fought beside us. He bled beside us. If that does not earn recognition, then perhaps our laws are weaker than we pretend. That silenced them. Finally, the eldest dragon rumbled. Very well. The human will be named Fire-Bonded, honorary kin of Clan Ember. Zyra turned to me, smiling faintly. Congratulations, Elias Trent. You are now family. Great, I said. Does family come with dental insurance? Her laugh echoed through the hall. Epilogue moment. Later, in the quiet of the hangar, Zyra joined me beside the Ardent. The molten glow of the station reflected off her scales. You are reckless, she said softly. And brilliant. My crew will speak of this hunt for cycles. Glad I could help, I said. Do I get a medal? You get respect, she said. And perhaps tea. I groaned. That stuff almost killed me. She stepped closer, her voice low, teasing. You are fire-bonded now. You must learn our ways. I'm married, Zyra. Her crest flared, eyes glinting. So you keep reminding me. Perhaps one day, your spouse will understand what it means to be admired by a dragon. I smiled. She already does. She's one. For the first time, Zyra looked genuinely surprised, then laughed, long and loud. Then the universe truly favors the bold. 3 weeks after the Cinder Sweep, I learned 2 important things about Draconians. First, they respect you more after you nearly die in front of them. Second, they start trying to kill you again just to check if it was luck. So when Lady Zyra invited me to attend a routine patrol coordination briefing, I knew it wasn't going to stay routine. I just didn't expect it to start with an explosion. Pyrehold Station, Operations Wing. The briefing room was carved into the molten rock core of the station, obsidian walls, heat glass windows overlooking the lava flows. Zyra stood at the center, giving her tactical debrief to half a dozen ranking officers. I sat near the wall, half listening and half regretting the draconian tea I'd been handed again. And so, Zyra concluded, the humans' unconventional tactics have proven effective. The Syndicate's losses are significant. I propose integrating Terran improvisation modules into our flight routines. One of the officers, Commander Vyrar, a massive silver-scaled brute, sneered. Draconian warriors do not mimic soft-bloods. Zyra's eyes narrowed. They adapt or they die. Careful, Lady Zyra, Vyrar hissed. You sound like one of them. That was the last thing he said before the wall behind him detonated. A blinding flash of plasma burst through the chamber, flinging us to the floor. Sirens screamed. Heat rushed in like a living thing. My vision swam. Smoke, fire, shadows moving fast. Assassins! Zyra roared. Betrayal in the fire. The attackers weren't Syndicate. Their armor was draconian, black-marked, but unmistakable. Internal traitors. Zyra's tail lashed as she drew her spear, meeting the first attacker mid-charge. Her plasma edge carved through his chestplate in a single stroke. I dove behind a shattered console, drawing my sidearm. Zyra! I shouted. Your own people? Not mine, she snarled, parrying another blow. Vyrr's loyalists. They resent human involvement. Great, I muttered. Intergalactic racism and workplace mutiny. Feels just like home. I shot one of the traitors as he raised his weapon toward her. He went down hard, armor sparking. Trent, she called. We must reach the command vault. They will target the reactor core next. Lead the way. The escape. The corridors of Pyrehold were chaos. Alarms blared, heat vents roared open to vent pressure. Draconians fought Draconians, claws, plasma, and honor codes forgotten in the riot of betrayal. Zyra moved like living fire, every motion precise and deadly. I covered her flank, laying suppressive bursts down the hall as we sprinted toward the command lift. One of the lifts exploded before we reached it. I turned to her. So, alternate plan? Her golden eyes flicked toward a maintenance shaft. Down. I was afraid you'd say that. We slid into the shaft, a vertical tunnel dropping half a kilometer through the station's molten infrastructure. Gravity barely kept up with how fast we fell. At the bottom, we landed hard, right into the auxiliary hangar, or what was left of it. The trap. Half the hangar bay was gone, open to the planet's atmosphere. Magma gales howled through the breach, turning the air into liquid heat. A group of Vyrr's soldiers waited near the emergency bulkhead, ambush formation. Zyra, I said quietly. They know we'd come here. I know, she replied. That is why we will not. She tapped her wrist gauntlet. A concealed door hissed open beside us, narrow, unmarked, leading into the maintenance catwalks under the hangar floor. We slipped inside, crouched low, the metal glowing faintly beneath us. Where's this lead? I whispered. To the reactor conduit. If Vyr means to destroy the station, that is where he will strike. I frowned. You're going to stop him. She corrected. You are fire-bonded now. I really need to read the fine print on that. The reactor core. We reached the reactor control nexus, a vast chamber suspended over a churning pool of molten energy. Conduits glowed white-hot, and standing at the central platform was Commander Vyr himself, flanked by his remaining loyalists. He turned as we entered, his scales reflecting the reactor's light like liquid mercury. Zyra, he said, voice dripping contempt. You bring the human. Fitting. You've already brought dishonor. You bring treason, she shot back. Stand down, Vyr. Never. The Ember clans grow weak under your softness. Humans are disease, and you are infected. I leaned toward her. Wow. He's subtle. Vyr roared, slamming a clawed hand on the control console. I will cleanse this place in fire. The reactor shields began to disengage. Zyra, I said, that sounds bad. It is. She lunged forward, spear igniting. The battle that followed was chaos and fury, plasma flashes painting the walls in molten light. I dove between conduits, firing bursts to draw the Loyalists' attention. One charged me. I ducked, grabbed a coolant pipe, and jammed it into his armor seam. Liquid nitrogen vented, freezing him mid-step. See! I shouted. Primitive instincts. Zyra parried VWR's strike, sparks flying as molten metal splattered between them. He was stronger, but she was faster, precise, controlled. Her spear caught his guard, twisting it aside, and with one final thrust, she drove the blade through his chest. VWR's eyes widened, molten blood dripping down his scales. You defend them? Zyra's voice was low. I defend honor. She kicked him backward, straight into the reactor pool. The explosion lit the entire chamber like a newborn sun. The rescue. The shockwave tore through the floor. Alarms screamed. The containment field faltered. Molten energy spilled through the cracks, turning metal to vapor. Reactors destabilizing. I shouted. We've got minutes. Zyra staggered, one wing torn from the blast, armor cracked. She looked at me, no fear, only calm. Go, Elias. The station must survive. I shook my head. Not without you. I am finished, she said simply. My kind burn bright and brief. I grabbed her arm. Not today. She tried to pull away. I didn't let go. I hoisted her onto my shoulders. Not easy, given she weighed as much as a small truck, and started running across the collapsing catwalk. Trent, she shouted. This is madness. Welcome to the human way. Sparks rained. Fire erupted behind us. I launched my grappling cable toward the hangar access above, the Ardent's AI locking on to my signal. A moment later, my ship's docking clamps punched through the smoke, extending a rescue line. Hold on! I yelled. We swung up through the inferno as the reactor chamber imploded beneath us. The Ardent sealed the hatch a split second before the shockwave hit. Aftermath. Hours later, orbit stabilized, we floated in silence. Zyra lay in my medbay, armor stripped, scales dim but alive. Her breathing was steady. When she finally opened her eyes, I was there, slumped in the chair beside her. You carried me, she said quietly. I wasn't about to let a dragon warrior die after she called me amusing. Her crest flicked faintly, a weary smirk. You risked everything. Again. Occupational hazard, I said, smiling. Besides, you still owe me tea. Her eyes softened, molten gold, but gentle now. Then you will have it. Fire bonded. I leaned back. You know, Zyra, for someone who started our friendship by finding me, you've gotten remarkably bad at letting me go. Her chuckle was low, weak, but genuine. Perhaps humans are contagious. The Emberfang's main bridge was silent except for the low hum of its containment fields. Ash from the burned-out orbit still drifted past the viewport, glowing faintly like dying embers. Humanity's supply fleet had arrived minutes ago, their hulls still shimmering with the plasma of atmospheric entry. They'd broken through an entire draconian blockade, without firing a single shot, by using stealth, decoys, and sheer audacity. Zyra stood before the command dais, armor-scarred and half-melted from the last battle. Her silver scales caught the flicker of the emergency lights, giving her the look of a living storm. Behind her, the Draconian Council's holographic figures loomed, ancient, austere, and furious. You sided with humans, hissed one of the elders. You defied Ember law. I upheld the code, Zyra said evenly, her voice calm, but her claws dug faint grooves into the deck plating. You swore that any who protect life are not to be shamed. Elias Trent saved 1,000 civilians, including our own. He acted with honor. The elder's image flickered. Honor is not the question. Dominion is. Before the council could continue, the doors hissed open. Elias strode in a patched flight jacket, one arm in a sling, smelling faintly of hydraulic oil and caffeine. 2 draconian guards snapped their halberds to bar his path. He stopped, gave them a grin that somehow dared them to move him. "Commander Trent," Zyra said, slightly weary, "you shouldn't be here. I figured if I'm being accused of saving lives, I should at least get a front-row seat." He glanced up at the holograms. "Besides, you called me the most dangerous species in the sector. Might as well live up to it." Several counselors hissed in outrage. Zyra's lips twitched, the smallest, most dangerous hint of a smile. The eldest counselor's tone turned to steel. "Human, you stand accused of violating draconian military space, interfering in sovereign operations, and influencing a warrior of our order. What do you say?" Elias didn't flinch. "I say you're welcome." The silence that followed could have cracked hull plating. He took a slow step forward, his voice steady, quiet, and somehow louder than the storm outside. "Your blockade was starving refugees. Zyra saw that. She did what warriors do, she adapted. She protected the living. That's what makes your people strong. That's what makes you worth knowing. Don't throw that away because some human embarrassed your paperwork." The council flickered in confusion. Zyra's tail froze. That word worth hit her harder than a plasma round. Then Elias added softly, "Besides, if you find me again, I'm still broke." A sound escaped her, a low, involuntary rumble between a growl and a laugh. The eldest finally sighed. Perhaps there is merit in his insolence. One by one, the holograms dimmed, fading from the room until only their afterimages remained. Zyra exhaled slowly, turning toward Elias. "You are either the bravest or the most foolish creature I've met." "Not mutually exclusive," he said with a smirk. She stepped closer, voice low. "When you faced them, I could feel your heartbeat. Steady. No fear." "Why?" Elias tilted his head. "Because you were standing beside me." For the first time since they met, she looked away. "You trust too easily." He chuckled. "You underestimate how rare it is for a dragon to find me and then save my ship twice." 3 times, she corrected, a faint gleam in her eyes. They stood like that, the war burning down outside the viewport, 2 soldiers from different worlds staring at what they'd saved, and what they might still destroy. Finally, Zyra extended a taloned hand. "Then let us make it formal. A warrior's pact, between Ember Fong and the Terran frontier fleet. Mutual aid, mutual respect." Elias took her hand, her claws nearly wrapped around his arm entirely, and shook it. "Deal." The ship shuddered as fresh jump coordinates uploaded. "The human fleet is moving," Zyra said. "You'll need a wing to guide them through draconian space." Elias looked out at the glowing warp signatures, hundreds of ships, humanity's ragtag convoy slipping past a dying star. "Guess that means we're allies now." Zyra nodded. "For now. Until you break another law." He grinned. "That'll be next week." She snorted, a low, smoky sound. "You tempt fate, human. Fate and I have an understanding." The Ember Fong turned toward the light of a new dawn, the volcanic planet below glowing like a forge, molten rivers tracing gold through blackened stone. Zyra stood at the helm, Elias beside her, the stars reflecting in her silvered eyes. "Zyra," he said quietly. "Yes, Elias? When you find me the first time," he grinned faintly. "Were you actually flirting?" She regarded him for a long moment, then looked forward, wings shifting slightly. "If you weren't married," she said with that same sly, dangerous smile, "you'd have found out." The Ember Fong surged into jump space, light flaring across its hull like dragon fire. And so began the first human-draconian alliance, born not from conquest or surrender, but from a fight and a laugh that echoed between the stars.